and you're moving towards the main stage, and slowly as you as the years go by, you're sort of moving away from it, back out to the second and third stages. You're bringing some people with you, but you have to accept that you have your moment, or in the moment where somebody is shining the spotlight right in your eyes. It doesn't last for long, and maybe at the time it's happening, you don't really realize it. The tone that the band set very early on, and the things we're singing about, an awful lot of people come up to me and go, they look around and go, fucking hell, this is what you were singing about 20, 25, 30 years ago. This sort of, we were not doing the satanic black metal thing. We were sort of, looking at, I suppose the fall of empire, the fall of nation states, something sort of romantic and grandiose from the 19th century, or look at this sleek token nonsense, this. I mean, to me it looks and sounds like Suno is making most of these songs anyway.
Alan Averill, welcome back to Into the Necrosphere.
Yeah, must be what, three times now.
This is the third time. I was on Agitators Anonymous once, and I was trying to think this morning, like, when last have you been on the podcast? I think it's probably about maybe 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it would be about that. Something like that, yeah.
So what's been happening obviously I've been following you on your podcast. I know you guys have been playing some shows. I was incredibly annoyed to miss you playing at Inferno this year, but I was in South Africa for my mom's birthday, so hence why I didn't go. But what's been going on?
I mean, just the I suppose the slow process of being in a band entering its potential legacy years, so to say, that moment where I think with the last album and the last couple of summers, last summer was very busy. We did maybe 20 festivals and a lot of the big ones, and it was great. I mean, maybe I'm not sure we ever played to as many people as last summer. And you're sort of, everywhere you think, oh, there's not going to be anybody at Grass Pop or Summer Breeze because, what people like has changed, and we're playing on days with a whole lot of bands that really I don't know anything anymore. But, it was packed, great shows. So you just sort of the slow realization that you are more or less exactly where you are. Sounds a kind of ridiculous thing to say, but that the chartable growth that you had maybe as a younger band, it just sort of is what it is. And it's up to you now whether do you enter this process of legacy or cult with a K and a U and an umlaut. And sometimes it feels like a bit in retrospect, like the last album is almost like signposting, hey, by the way, there's 9 other albums and there's all this other stuff. So it's a kind of interesting, revealing, I suppose, vaguely melancholy, but also kind of satisfying on some level looking back to realize that, like, let's say 70-80% of your career, in parentheses, is in the rearview mirror, and so that's kind of where I think everybody has been in the last couple of years, just sort of getting used to that idea. Of course, probably me thinking about it more than anybody else, but they're unencumbered by such the weight of sort of those kind of things sometimes. But that's kind of where it is. Sort of figuring out you more of a view into how the last album was and was received by people and that kind of thing. And also the industry, even in the 2 or 3 years since we talked, I think has changed drastically, So that's kind of what's been going on, That and still being able to put my free kicks in the stanchion from 30 yards and,
Well, I've heard you talk about this a lot on your podcast, legacy, feeling like you sort of getting to the final stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still, relatively speaking, you're a pretty young guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not 25, but you're not where a lot of other bands, are, maybe 15, 20 years, your senior. you would regard them as legacy bands. It certainly doesn't feel to me like Primordial is entering his legacy era yet.
I don't know. I mean, we're starting to get lots of offers to play albums that are 20, 25 years old. I guess maybe it's because we started when we were quite young. No, I don't feel particularly old, so to speak. It's more, I think, to do with once you're hitting about, we speak about this a lot, say at festivals, whether I'm sitting with Sakis and Rotting Christ or Morgan from Marduk, or it's that thing I think of getting into year 30, 35 of a band or a little bit longer, and realizing that, okay, maybe there's 10 years, 5 years, 10 years. I don't know. Are you still going to be pulling on the corpse paint and leather in 15 years? Is anybody going to want to see you doing that? I don't know. So I think it's the realization that you've made 10 albums worth of stuff. It's not that like there's no more creativity or something, but certainly whether you like it or not, the majority of your career is in the rearview mirror. And I think it's the sort of, a band like Rotting Christ is a good example of how they've reinvented themselves. They had a kind of low period about maybe late 90s, Sleep of the Angels. Most people in the old underground thought they were done. But they've kind of, through relentless touring and sort of Sakis replacing the kind of parts of the machine in the band. But it's just that sort of realization that, and you have to sort of make peace with it. If you struggle against it or fight it or keep trying to, I don't know, like if you're 50 something now and you're still somehow trying to capture the attention of 20 to 25-year-olds, I think you're sort of, you're in some sort of doom loop, I think, because I just don't think it's going to work for you. It's not, of course, that you don't have newer fans and you don't acquire some newer fans, but it just sort of, I mean, we've seen it. It's a tale as old as time about you trying to keep the aging process in the rearview mirror, so to speak. And this process of reinvention, we've seen it through every pop star in the mainstream and movie stars, whatever. You've got to sort of hit that last few chapters gracefully, I think,
I think, I get more what you mean now. I mean, for me, from a creativity perspective and from a relevance perspective, I don't think you guys have lost a step. I mean, I think I said this to you when you were on here before. How It Ends, to me, one of the best Primordial albums. But equally, I think I mentioned it when I was doing my countdown of the best albums of that year. How It Ends, I think, speaks to me in a particular way. I think because of my age, roughly about the same generation. There was a kind of introspective, melancholic element to it that I think it just wouldn't mean the same to a 25-year-old because they don't see life in the same way.
Maybe it's a kind of world-weary, defiant album that speaks to a certain age. There's certainly something in the idea that I remember writing some songs on older albums, maybe like, say, Cities Carved in Stone on the Gathering Wilderness, which is from 2005, and that's a really world-weary song. But the lyrics are probably too world-weary for a young man to sing. That now when we played the song last year, it makes much more sense. It's like when you see kind of like, country music, and it's very hard for a 27-year-old to sing world-weary lyrics, or before your time. Now you're sort of becoming, those songs take on a greater meaning now. It's not so much that whether How It Ends was a good or a bad album. It was about how it was received or your place in the general milieu of the industry or of the scene. And people who liked the band liked it. But it's more about, there's a moment you have, maybe for us it was To the Lame Is Dead, kind of, then, and the albums after were Great Men Have Fallen in 2007 to 2014, where you're kind of in the center of the target, and slowly, and you're moving towards the main stage, and slowly as you as the years go by, you're sort of moving away from it back out to the second and third stages. You're bringing some people with you, but you have to accept that you have your moment, or in the moment where somebody is shining the spotlight right in your eyes. It doesn't last for long, and maybe at the time it's happening, you don't really realize it. Not every band gets that moment, whatever that moment is. I mean, it's all relative to, I suppose there's, it can be much bigger or much smaller, depending on so many different variants. But looking back now, I can see that was the moment where you're capturing a certain element of people's attention. And also your fans are the same age as you and have grown up with you. Sometimes you're capturing people. Now people are a bit older and, there's a familiarity after 10 albums. And that's just the way it is. So it's the last couple of years has been the sort of, especially also the post-pandemic moment, that kind of pause and then, kind of starting up the machine again and starting up being creative again, all that kind of stuff. And you kind of realize like, oh, okay, this is where we are now. We're kind of moving into, I'm not quite elder statesman, but let's say Secretary General part of a moment, a part chick in the state apparatus. So it's about making peace with that and not trying to fight against your younger self. But on those terms, no, I mean, it's been interesting. The traveling is as good as ever. The gigs are as good as ever. I'm singing better than ever. Other parts of my attention span have been a bit shredded, but it's you just have to sort of make peace with at 50 at the idea that you're not going to be resonating the same way with people who are. And there's plenty of peers of mine who don't, they make the mistake, I think, of constantly trying to chase this younger audience, this younger demographic. And as well as I do, when you were 20 or 25, the last thing you wanted to fucking do was listen to bands who are, not your generation. It took a while for you to go, oh yeah, okay, maybe I will go listen to Uriah Heep or whatever else, Maybe that's bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and again, I do feel like Primordial in particular speaks to people of a certain mindset, and it could be people that are just old in spirit, not necessarily age.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely born old, but I think also what's becoming resonant is the tone that the band set very early on, and the things we're singing about. An awful lot of people come up to me and they look around and go, fucking hell, this is what you were singing about 20, 25, 30 years ago. This sort of, we were not doing the satanic black metal thing. We were sort of, looking at, I suppose the fall of empire, the fall of nation states, something sort of romantic and grandiose from the 19th century, or, something quite hard to define, a bit sort of esoteric, stroke romantic nationalist, all sort of woven together, that now an awful lot of people seem to be unraveling the same ends that we were, thinking about. And so there's a sort of, become a strange sort of cultural resonance to songs like As Rome Burns and stuff. And especially as the metal thing in the mainstream is moving in such another direction now compared to the relative seriousness of bands like ourselves. I think you come to represent a sort of thorn in the side of that for a lot of people, and they're quite sort of, I think they're happy you still exist and you're still kicking against the pricks,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I do. I definitely feel more than I have felt at any point in my life. I really do feel a distinction between the younger generation and my generation.
Yeah.
When it comes to metal, ditto. And even the way that, let's say conduct is policed at shows. I don't know whether you saw that big drama around the guy dressed as a banana at the Ended show. And, the front man from Ended, I don't think necessarily handled it correctly, but the point that I made at the time was, imagine that happened in 1986. If you did that at an Agnostic Front show or at a Slayer show in 1986, I mean, getting your costume ripped off you would be the least of your problems.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. And it's, I kind of watched that with sort of, because the previous week at a gig, at a festival, there'd been ourselves and Grand Magus at the end, and all of the bands that day were sort of, to me, gimmicky novelty bands. There was, pirates and astronauts and all sorts of stuff. And you could see clearly a divide in the audience, the younger people who were there dressed like them or dressed in all these kind of things. And you could see they were obviously utterly bored by ourselves and Grand Magus at the end. And there was a moment during one of the songs where I could see this person dressed as, I guess, some sort of unicorn or something coming up to the stage. And I just remember my head going, like as in, no, step away. And in other words, we made eye contact, and they kind of went, and kind of turned around, and it was just like, it's this huge divide between, like so much of the modern metal scene is just so infantile, so childish, so gimmick laden, and it's all done for clicks and content. But a huge section of the crowd now are, you know, it's kind of like cosplay. It's becoming like a sort of child's crash kind of cosplay kind of thing, and you can see that gang of kids who were there at this festival. No problem if that's your thing; they're your bands. But as you say, it's also, I mean, if you're, part of me, because I'm older and Cynical, thinks, you know, it's, you know, if you're so lacking in personality that you have to come dressed as a fucking banana to a gig because it's your token point, it's your thing, man. And it's also, hey, I'm the content banana guy at the show. I mean, plenty of gigs in the 80s and 90s, if you showed up like that, someone would have punched your head in. You wouldn't have got into see Deicide in 1990 in Dublin with a fucking... And so in fact, if you got off the train, just regular people, you'd be just picked on because somebody would go, what the fuck are you dressed as? And we've come to accept this sort of level of... no, how can I say? The idea that people take anything seriously anymore is almost... frowned on. It's almost scorned, you know, the idea that you're serious about things. And so, you know, showing up to a Primordial show with dressed in or whatever, and now, of course, I say this, people are going to do it. But I remember watching like Dissection at Vaken before, and there were dudes who'd shown up with plastic bags full of furry toys. And I remember watching from the side about 50 or 100 yards away, and I was there with my friends from Destroyer, and my first instinct was, how do we get to them? Let's eat the fuck out of them. Who the fuck do you think you are? Like, and I don't, like, there's fucking tens of thousands of people there. And me and Keith were kind of going, how do we plot a way through all these people to show them what for? The idea that you would do that. I mean, look, I have a sense of, the other thing I was talking about this in a podcast as well 2 weeks ago. I have a sense of humor. I'm Irish. I don't need fucking gimmicks and comedy music. Like, when nothing has ever made me laugh in a song, ever. Even as a kid, I remember being like, nonsense, like, you know, that Michael Jackson, whatever the fuck it is, Eat It. I remember being 11 and going, well, that's not funny. Nothing. And that's not, and you know, anybody who knows me will know, like, spend a trip in a van with Primordial, and it's like, you know, it's fun, you know, everyone has a sense of humor, you know, it's about, but it's all become so reducto, absurdio, whatever you want to say. It's just a childishness that's sort of overtaken everything. And I think it's easy for people to identify with that because dealing with something serious. I was thinking about this the other day. Let me know what it feels like. So much of the mainstream metal has become so childish and so obsessed with novelty that the adults seem to have moved sideways into like Desert Fest and the kind of stonery, doomy kind of thing, which is still blue jeans and riffs like heavy metal used to be, you know what I mean? And like every metal band that's getting sort of bigger now has a novelty that they're purchased upon, which is, of course, the gimmick that makes people want to film. And so that's how you do your own promo. You know, you don't get any of your own promo by just being heads down, boogie, rock, status quo, 1972. You don't get that anymore. So maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of why the scene has become so childish, you know? I don't know. Sorry, there was an awful lot of blah, 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 blah.
No. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, the thing is, very often there'll be a conversation about mainstream metal that I'll have with people, and most of the bands that they're talking about, I have no idea over because I don't listen to it and I pay no attention to it.
Yeah,
I've seen Residents and Sleep Token and Party Cannon and stuff like that. I mean, it's hot garbage in my opinion.
Well, I mean, it's also there's huge bands like Spirit Box, and there's, as you say, Sleep Token is massive stuff. You know? I mean, I had fucking beers with the guys from Party Cannon, whatever. That's not on the same level. But the huge bands all have some kind of novelty. Or you look at bands like Cannon Fiber or Guerra, or, you know, other kind of more medium-sized bands. And they all are leaning into, what it is that I watched Creator and Anthrax in Dublin, and there's about 5,000 or 6,000 people there. And to be honest, to be fair to Creator, they did kick everybody's ass. And the stage show was wild. wild. There was like bodies hanging from the ceiling of this huge venue. And I saw Creator in 1999 or 2000 to like 250 people in Dublin at like their lowest point. And there was like flamethrowers and cannons, and immediately about 1,500 or 2,000 old thrashers took their phones out, going, and they all went, fucking hell, look at this. And what they're doing is they're advertising it to everybody else that they know, going, after fucking see where Creator are at now. Anthrax, by comparison, who were sold way more records than Creator, came out after them with just a backdrop and just played, I'd say, with 2,000 people left within the first 4 songs. Not only because they're older and they're like last bus, last train, home time, which is just typical anyway, but also like Creator just sort of sucked all of that from the room. And what they're doing is very clever, because they're advertising. Creator are arguably bigger than ever, but their biggest selling record is probably Coma Souls. I'd say it's about 300 copies or something. And Anthrax's is probably 2 million, maybe, Sound of White Noise, I guess. But what you're doing, if you have all the outfits and all the stuff, is a whole generation immediately takes out their phones. They're advertising that somewhere. So I understand it, because the music industry is kind of broken. The old methods of promotion don't work anymore, and bands have to be their own promo. I understand it. Like, we played a gig and there was a sort of band dressed as astronauts. Then there was a band they were all dressed like Mozart and Beethoven. I don't remember the names of them. I mean, it's like, and you know that those bands are meeting up for content days. Days, and I don't know, I fundamentally, on some level, rock has always had, whether Genesis dressed up as things in 1970s, so did Elton John, so did whatever, Alice Cooper, there's always been an element of drama and something, or pantomime theatre, let's say, to rock, to music. So on some level, I kind of get it. It's just when it's so infantile, so childish, and so base level, and so aimed at, and so cynically set upon, I suppose, is the difference. It's a tough line to walk, but it's certainly very few bands are making it through to the mainstream part without a gimmick. Like Night Eternal, as good as they are, nice guys, they're not going to get to where Cannon Fiber is right now. The Cannon Fiber is dressed as World War I Prussian soldiers with their, helmets. There's one over there. And so instantly people film it. It's nothing to say anything about Cannon Fiber's music. It's okay, but it just doesn't work. A cool leather jacket doesn't cut it anymore for likes and shares. And that's a kind of sad indictment of where I think everything is,
Well, I mean, there's definitely a distinction, I think, between theatrics and between cosplay. I mean, we grew up liking a lot of the same bands. Wasp, I know you're a fan of Wasp.
Yeah.
Massive fan, and there was so much theatrics to what they were doing, but at the same time, the spirit of that was all about rebellion, and they did have the riffs and the songs to back it up. I feel like if a Sleep Token were to come out and they actually had the music I was vaguely interested in, I would quite like it. I mean, Rammstein is incredibly theatrical. Yeah, I love Rammstein. I think live they're absolutely phenomenal. I think everyone has to see them at least once. Yeah. But I find their music pretty cool as well, especially if you've seen them live. Yeah. With a lot of the other stuff, like Spirit Box, for example, it's unlistenable.
Yeah, I mean, I did a horror podcast, but I did a podcast about this: why old metal hates new metal. And I was at a tattoo convention in France, and the first night was all new bands, the second night was old school bands, and it was really interesting to observe. And also because the stage was like in the middle of the convention, so you could go on the back of the stage. You could literally stand and watch the new bands from the side and the next day. And the differences between the 2 days were so profound. Personally, on the first day, on the new day, few of the bands were actually playing live. The drummers there was no amps, they were all in-ears. There was an awful lot of not playing on behalf of lots of musicians. All the singing was pitched. But one thing I noticed, and the second day had walls of amps. There's the first difference. The fans of the bands on the first day came in and were like very, very, like they didn't look like they were having a good time at all. They came in, stood with their couple of hundred people. I wouldn't say they even seemed to me, they weren't like raging into their band. There was no drinking from them. And as soon as their band finished, they were out. They like didn't want to be in the convention. You could tell that. The other thing was that watching the first bands on the first day, none of them had any, what to me would be riffs. There was no harmonies. It was all go gong go gong gong da 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 da. So the guitar was like 7 strings, I guess, down to it, all all rhythmic. There was never a harmony, like a classic heavy metal harmony. There was no with solos. It was all about the jung 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 gong, and then drop, and then down 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 down. So what they would all do, synchronized drop thing, clearly for people to film for TikTok. So it was like an endless procession of TikTok ready moments, all kind of orchestrated, mimed. And I just remember I was standing there watching this with my friend, and I wasn't instinctively, again, I was quite open-minded. I want to watch all 4 bands and watch them, And after I was there going, man, it's so anti-human. It's got so little soul in it. And, it's not aimed at me, obviously, but it was just so interesting to observe the 2 elements. And I just, it left me so far away from the shore, and of course every band had their outfits and their gimmicks and their things and their whatever. And you kind of think to yourself, the optics of the show, they might as well just sort of play the record and mime along to the optics, because I would imagine every single show would be the exact same thing with the same lighting and the same whatever. But they're not really writing songs to me. They're writing drops and moments. And if a moment catches on, that's how they get bigger, or get views or whatever,
Well, it's because they can turn that moment into a 30-second TikTok video, and that's what everyone's like, oh, listen to the hook on this.
Yeah.
And it's typically a pretty simple melody that is, that just happens to catch on. But that soul piece to me is very, I think there was a part of me that had always thought, well, that's always going to be what stands out and, what continues to capture the attention of people. To a degree, I still feel that, but there's an awful lot of soulless bands that have very big followings.
Yeah.
to your point.
I mean, I think the other thing about it is that a friend of mine who's into hip hop and stuff was explaining to me, because I was giving out about Kneecap, saying it was just fucking childish nonsense, which it is. But, and that, some other dude is writing the songs and this, that, the other. And my friend essentially goes like, look, dickhead, you're too old and you're too angry. You want levels of Black Flag, Henry Rollins anger from Kneecap, but it's banter music. It's, get your Brits out, get your tits out, whatever. So I was like, oh, I thought it was Brits out. He goes, no, it's get your Brits out. Oh, right. Okay. He goes, this is banter stuff. It's not meant to be as angry as Public Enemy or Black Flag or Slayer. Because bad, and he goes, that's what you're looking for in it. But he says also something he said to me very interesting, which was, this is music made into a phone. People talking. Everything is about the face in the phone, right? So, of course, the instrumentation is, to me, juvenile, because I'm a musician and I hear do, 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 do. Like, it's almost inconsequential. It's all about the banter, the lyrics, the talking, the rapping, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And that's where, even in the new metal bands that I was doing, they're not even new metal, but I think back to new metal and have the score, and I poured on Korn, and it's like all is forgiven compared to many fucking, yeah, it's true. I mean,
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, compare Korn to some of the nonsense that passes for mainstream metal now, like Sleep Token or something, and I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll take that first Korn album. But the point being that even those bands that were on that convention, the first day, it was all so vocal driven. It was all about the vocal drop, and the vocals were treated like pop music, I guess, like Drake or something like this. This huge pop musification of the vocal, and so the instrumentation becomes less and less important, and the guitar becomes more like a sort of rhythmic thing than a lead instrument. And I think that's one of the profound differences. That's probably because an awful lot of music is just made into the phone. I suppose it's because what people are used to doing as means of communication. And so my friend says, yeah, of course, Kneecap's music is inconsequential to the jumping around and the shouting, because it's not the important bit. I said, well, is any of it important? And he's like, well, that's a different question altogether. But he had a point,
I smiled when I heard you talking about elitism in hip hop, because I then thought to myself, actually, when it comes to hip hop, which I do really like, I am way more elitist and gatekeepy when it comes to hip hop. Like, as far as I'm concerned, everything virtually made after 1994 is total garbage. The moment that, when it comes to hip hop, the moment that the instrumentation stopped becoming about serving the flow and serving the MC, I checked out. But Eric B. and Rakim, the DOC, Paris. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff that came out in the early 90s, late 80s. That is timeless, just timeless genius. But to look at where it went from there to where hip hop is today, there's kind of a fear that I have that modern metal, it's kind of already moving in that direction. It just jettisons everything that made it great, and it turns into something that we don't want to recognize as being metal.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I've a friend of mine, when we were kids in the I suppose mid to late 80s, he was really into LL Cool J and stuff like this when we were all listening to thrash metal as well. And we just would play all those records. So, I mean, I heard Public Enemy and stuff in like 88, 89. And like, I could still listen to that because it sort of resonated with, I could hear the same anger I heard in Megadeth, strangely enough, thrash metal. But my friend who's like the exact same about, as I say, hip hop, as I would be about black metal or something. We were watching he goes, look at this. And it was like two older hip hop dudes talking about they were watching, it was like a reaction watch along to some open air hip hop show in America, and they were just tearing it to bits. It was just literally people just screaming and shouting on stage, jumping down, and tons of people, cameras filming him, and the whole thing. And he was just like, this is what passes for what I love now, at least in mainstream. And he goes, and you were saying the exact same thing about what you love. And I think maybe it's just the nature of things that, I don't think things are always cyclical in that it'll come around again. I think that the way technology is, it's changed the dynamic so profoundly that, often my relatives who are a bit older than me would go, where are all the bands? Where's all the bands? I go, oh, well, okay. To understand why there's no bands, you've got to understand so many demographics about everything from the cost of rehearsal rooms in a city to the cost of instruments to there being no venues anymore to the broader emasculation of Western society, which has, moved people into different kinds of music, which, some people think is like a marketing psyop, the Ed Sheeranization of testosterone that once upon a time used to go into angry guitar music just isn't there. This is the first decade where there's none in mainstream music. If Greta Van Fleet is what passes for that, then, we need to carpet bomb Rivendell or wherever the fuck they're from, you know what I mean? But it's fucking true. But the point being that, there are all these sort of coefficients that have, I think, changed the landscape so drastically that for the gatekeepers or the elitists or whoever that can say, this stuff isn't coming back. When this generation are gone, they're kind of gone. When the old guard are gone, it's sort of, I think, the playing field is left to all of this kind of stuff, and I'm sure people in hip hop and folk and jazz probably feel something similar. Like everything now is, I was arguing with my friends earlier on, compared 1976 movies to 2026. It's not even a comparison. The death of literature, the people are reading less books, but everything is pointing to some cultural nadir. And as I said, my buddy's like, watch this, and it's just these two guys tearing apart. Like, this is what passes for hip hop now. And as you say, even I could see somebody who doesn't have enough knowledge to speak to it properly was going like, fucking hell, this is appalling. Like, just the same way I sent him things and go, look at this Sleep Token nonsense, this. I mean, to me, it looks and sounds like Suno is making most of these songs anyway, but,
1,000%. Yeah. 1,000%. I saw on the news rant last week, I had my friend Carl on, and we were watching. I saw my first ever Dogma music video, and they had the lyrics on the screen, and I said, there is no, like, I'm almost 100% sure those are AI lyrics. That's not,
you mean the dressed as nuns thing?
Yeah. I was like, those are AI lyrics. That's not somebody that wrote that nonsense.
No. It's, look, it's, that crap. But it's a tale as old as time. Dress them up like that, and somebody's going to watch them. But the problem is that these bands get bookings at festivals that should be there for real musicians, but people put, it's a novelty thing. Or like at the end, you'll be like, who the fuck is Frog Leap, or who the fuck is whatever, or who's this? And you realize like this, oh, this is joke shit. Or you see it even in rock, like you can see it at rock festivals sometimes where the DJ at the end, or even at metal festivals, the DJ at the end will play like 80s pop music, or, like New Kids on the Block, something like, what the fuck are you doing? And you begin to realize like, oh, there's a veneer of all of that stuff sort of swimming around underneath the thing that you like. You get the feeling an awful lot of people are pretending to be into this same, into underground stuff or countercultural stuff, and they don't really take it that seriously, my brain is fucking going all over the place now. Too much Red Bull White Peach edition.
Red Bull White Peach edition. I've never had that before.
Yeah, feel free to sponsor me. No, it's I think it's I think it's just somewhere where society is going, and I'm sure you could talk to people who make short movies or something like this, who are talking about the creeping feelings about AI moving in to take their place and positions. And there's so many of those bands, like I said, the sleep tokenization, and you listen to it and you're like, this is Suno creating music for 15-year-old girls, it sounds like, I mean, maybe, and also the masks mean that you can swap and change musicians, and does it really make any difference? Or if you're the Grand Master, or as you say, Dogma, I mean, this is like dressing girls up as nuns. I mean, it's a surefire way to get somebody to come and watch you. But then you resort to playing 2 minutes of a Pantera song to, who cares? It's like,
when you were saying earlier about how music isn't quite as angry anymore, I thought about it for some bizarre reason. I was thinking about it earlier today. I mean, we've come a long way since Far Beyond Driven was #1 on the Billboard charts, and if you go back and listen to that record today, it's just one of the most like ferociously masculine, like completely unapologetic for what it is. I mean, it's just like being battered at the face repeatedly for 12 songs.
But it's not even about, I totally know what you mean there, but also like if you watch, like lately I've been sort of reading a bit into this sort of thing about, is the neutering of rock music a sort of CIA-based psyop, which is kind of funny. And I'm not entirely sure that that's true. But there's something interesting there, because like if you watch that Woodstock 99 documentary and watch the 250,000 people going literally, Fred Durst would be like, break this place apart. And they did. And the levels of masculine energy coming off that are pretty fucking extreme. Born and Limp Bizkit, watching that. And then now look at what passes for music that teenagers like. I mean, it's almost neutered of any form of rebellion. And I mean, we don't even have to go back to Pantera. We can go back to Rage Against the Machine or Korn and Limp Bizkit, even Green Day or something, American Idiot or whatever the fuck. I suppose that's even 99 or 2000 or something. But for the last 15, 20 years, like what's rock music now is like what? Machine Gun Kelly, Youngblood, Greta Van Fleet. Like really? There's absolutely nothing masculine about any of those bands. They're all utterly lacking in masculinity. And we've been sort of battering this around, this thought we were talking about in the pub there the other day. And so like, I mean, it would be naive to think that there are not forces, institutions of power that have elements of guidance over society and culture. It would be naive to think that they don't exist, whether it's through funding or defunding of certain types of music or, we've had artists who were CIA plants. People say that about Pollock, I think, maybe. I could have just plucked that absolutely out of the ether. Who knows if that's true? But there's something in the idea of like, okay, well, this stuff, this angry Limp Bizkit shit, forget about this. Let's manufacture a situation where everything is Sabrina Carpenter, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, and whatever else, because let's remove this level of energy from society as a sort of driving force. And it's very hard to argue that there might be some element of that to be true. Even if you look at Oasis coming back, that was like the biggest news of a moment. And it brings you back to that mid-90s period where everything was Oasis and Blur and guitar music, and Oasis were being celebrated for just their kind of fuck you, kind of laddish attitude. And you think to yourself, wow, that seems like a long, long, long time ago. The same sort of feeling in society is almost completely absent, you know?
Yeah.
So, well, ambling nonsense.
But Billy Corgan has spoken about that recently on his podcast. And I mean, there's, you know, again, you can kind of take a step back. I'm sure you've seen the rumors swirling around on the internet that since USAID has been defunded, there have been shifts in the music that's more popular on, you know, amongst the youth, or at least that's on the Billboard charts. There's been shifts in the voting patterns, particularly of South American countries. So I don't know whether I don't know enough to say for sure what my thoughts are on that. There's certainly some coincidences.
I was talking about that, or looking at some things about that, actually only today as well. It seems to be swimming in our algorithm. This idea that hip hop is less popular. But I asked my buddy who's really into that stuff, and he's going, man, it's been on the wane popularity-wise for 10 or 15 years. There's lots of things that it's all about, like sort of pop music now, and like this sort of horrible style of country music. And he says it might just be coincidence that somebody's picked up on this now and linked it to USAID or whatever you want to say. I mean, there's no doubt probably that certain things got promoted in the 1990s through forms of early DEI, I guess. It's hard to know. Sometimes it's very hard to, I was trying to argue back against the idea with my friend saying like, well, the metrics by which we used to measure the popularity of the music industry 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago are so different, so vastly different now. And if those metrics you're measuring on them are streams, then, I mean, by the same token that somebody says that hip hop isn't popular anymore, neither is rock. So does that mean USAID has not been funding rock labels? I don't know. Like it seems to me to be too much of a coincidence, but it's an interesting thing to think about and consider about the influence, as I said, of institutions of power and governance, of their ability to shape elements of society and what is just circumstance, you know? But I'm not sure if those two things are linked. I'd have to think about it and look at it a little bit more, but there's no doubt like that. There's no doubt that over all the years, you can be guaranteed that I don't know, the government was watching Bob Dylan back in the day, or watching, you know, Jimi Hendrix, or watching Janis Joplin, or Jim Morrison, or paying attention to their influence on society, you know, whether it was Doors lyrics or, you know, they've always had a little look into, like, you know, is John Lennon's phone tapped in 1980? Very possibly. So the idea that it doesn't happen is also naive to me.
Well, there's the whole theory that it was the CIA that got behind and got the record labels and the radios to promote gangster rap in the early 90s.
I mean, I do have an anecdotal story. A friend of mine who I used to work with 10 or 15 years ago used to work for record labels in the promotional department in the 1980s and early 1990s. And she told me that they had to sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And there was a sea change in about 92, 93, obviously the post-Nirvana sea change, but also a sea change when it came to hip-hop and rap and stuff. And that this guy came in basically with a big storyboard and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're creating the backstory for this rapper. And this is all of the backstory. And you obviously, you talk about this, you lose your job. Here's the money that's going to be into this. And what we're going to do is we're going to sell the danger of urban music to suburban white kids. And we're going to craft the backstories. I mean, you've probably seen that footage of Tupac when he's in drama school. I mean, could be AI, could be not. I don't know enough about it, but he's a completely different character to the Tupac, the gangster Tupac. He's like a drama school student. Has he been crafted and molded into the character he was? So, you know, there's certainly, I do know for sure people who worked in record labels in LA back in the 1990s and 80s who, you know, several of them told me that, yeah, they were instructed to start working on crafting these urban stories to sell to suburban kids. So there, you know, there is no doubt some sort of truth to that. Is it just marketing? Or is that what it's always been? Elvis selling the shaking of his hips to, urban youth everywhere. The Beatles selling their mop tops. I don't know. I don't know how different things are.
It was a lot more fun when there was like an organic growth to bands. Like, I remember the excitement around, when Metallica were getting big, when Guns N' Roses were getting big. There was a lot behind them from a record label perspective, but there was also an organic element to how they became so popular.
Yeah, I mean, have you been following the story of that band Geese?
No.
So this is shit name. If you don't understand,
I'm about to say I wouldn't listen to a band called Geese.
No fucking way. If you don't understand, like The Guardian called them the saviors of rock and roll. If you don't understand that calling a band Geese means you can't be rock and roll, you don't understand fucking rock and roll.
Yeah.
Out of here. Anyway, point being, they blew up on their fourth album, and it was in Rolling Stone. There was a written interview with this. They're called Chaotic Good Projects. You can look up their website. It's a brand marketing website, and the people who basically broke Geese. You probably see the same with Angine de Poitrine, the polka dot, band, who everyone saw before they heard. But yet the band had a tour ready to announce on the back of their algorithmic breaking. Interesting, right? So that means must have been coordinated. So basically what they discuss how you break a band in modern day. And what you do is you basically seed the algorithm with thousands of TikToks, all with the same backing track, which is from, of every different possible situation. There's that repetition of the song. You employ bot farms and click farms, and you have bots that reply to every single comment everywhere and making comments, kind of discussing how these are the new up and coming band. And slowly but surely it catches on with people who are looking for the new and interesting thing. Then the band are announced at Coachella. Their tour sold out. You announce a medium-sized tour, so that sells out, so that generates more interest for the next one. And they were the two guys who run Chaotic Good Projects, basically discussing how, look, it's a marketing style. Because the difference is, my friend was there to be pushing back against it, and he was like, well, it's always been marketing. I go, yeah, but marketing to actual people through the radio in 1987 is different to using bots to discuss with other bots, discussing whatever, Like I said, the Angine de Poitrine, as unusual as they are musically, there's no doubt if they were just two fat guys from Birmingham, no one would give a shit what they're doing, So it's all about polka dot imagery, and everyone saw it and then heard it. So it seems to be clearly that to break a band in 2026 requires using sort of methods that are, well, mechanical, non-human,
Yeah.
At least, there's no reason for you to listen to Geese. They sound exactly like you imagine they would sound.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you call your band Geese, you go and listen to Thin Lizzy or something,
Oh, fuck no.
But anyway.
Unreal. But so a sidebar, and you mentioned Woodstock 99. I brought it up on this podcast so many times because it's an event I am morbidly fascinated by. But here's a question for you. Somebody who you probably saw the event, saw the documentary. As a performer, as a frontman, if you were in Fred's shoes during that Limp Bizkit show, how would it have felt to you seeing that level of energy coming back off that crowd? Because I've always watched that. That to me, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Limp Bizkit's music, to me that is one of the most, let's disregard some of the bad things were happening in the crowd, but it's one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen because the energy is just out of this world.
Yeah, it's wild. It's insane. I mean, it's so insanely intoxicating. And that is really, like I said, to anybody who's not seen it, go and watch it especially when you see the Korn with the that song is. I don't know what that song is. Or as you say, the Limp Bizkit stuff. It's just wild. It's about 250,000 people, I think.
The one estimate was 400,000.
Yeah,
during the Limp Bizkit performance.
Yeah, I mean it's insane, and the levels of aggression and testosterone and anger coming off it. You could clearly see how somebody could watch that and go, "This needs to be neutered. We need this society. We need to get men. We need to get teenage boys listening to One Direction or whatever. you could clearly see how somebody would think that, like, this is a negative influence on society. As a frontman, I suppose, who's had levels, microcosmic levels of something similar, whether it's feeling like you're in tune with a crowd of several hundred or several thousand people, who, like, as I said, when you go raise your hand, everyone fucking whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of an aphrodisiac like no other, really. And so for somebody like, it's no wonder when you look back at the amount of people who hated, what's his name from Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst, because you couldn't play a show like that and not come off the stage going, fucking hell, I'm some kind of a god, I'm some kind of this is fucked up. And I guess they were probably like 28, 27, 29. How you wouldn't come off the stage and go, okay, with some sort of god complex is beyond me. You would have to be utterly sort of devoid of any of the foibles of humanity if you didn't on some level, but yeah, it's a fascinating glimpse into a moment, I think, in American society that will never be, or Western society that will never really be repeated. I can't see the same thing happening anymore,
No. Just on you and like moments that you've had like that. I remember watching the Brutal Assault 2015 video, and you would that they've got up on YouTube, and they've got As Rome Burns on there. I mean, that, like, if I had to, just based on the videos I've seen of you, that performance, I mean, that must have been, you were so locked in. Yeah. And it that energy just comes off the screen, whether you're watching it on your phone, whether you're watching it on TV, is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that was a great show. And it's like, Brutal was maybe 10, 12, 15,000 people or something. And yeah, sometimes you just hit the correct moment. I mean, it wasn't dark yet, which is unusual that you can create that atmosphere when it's, when you don't have the light so much. It was kind of just about getting dark. Yeah, sometimes you just hit the right moment, especially if you're in between two quite brutal fast bands and you sense people will, like, okay, have a little bit of a craving for something different, and you just hit that particular right moment, and the sound is right, the performance is right, and you feel like everything just sits in perfectly. Thankfully, we still have those shows, and I still feel like that happens more often than not, which is really good. It's, because plenty of times, you'll go and see a band and go, I never want to promote to be the band where people go, yeah, they're all right now, but they were better in 2004. They were better in, whatever else. You can't. It's hard to chase your youth, but if you can keep a sort of, let's say, a sort of solid base of a 7 out of 10 performance all the time, and then try and come up and down above that, But yeah, that one was a really good show. The Brutal Assault after that wasn't so good, and then the last one we played, which was 2 years ago, was really, really good again. So yeah, sometimes you're lucky. Everything clicks into gear with the crowd, and it gets filmed, and it becomes a very good representation of where you were at that moment.
Are there things that you could do when you were younger that you can't necessarily do anymore, either vocally or in terms of performance, or are there things that you can do now that you didn't necessarily have the ability to do previously?
My feeling, well, no, it's not really feeling. Certainly the best singing I ever did is on the last Primordial album, and there's things on the last one that I couldn't do on the first one. Now, the black metal voice from the early album, if you listen to the demo of 1994 stuff, there's a kind of really Grishnacky kind of in the wood style voice that's hard to get when you don't rehearse that anymore, and sort of probably belongs in 1994. But as for the singing and stuff, no, that certainly I feel at this moment in my life I'm better singing now than I ever was. There's just things like you have to remember you're not fucking immortal anymore, and the temptation is somebody who talks all the time, as somebody who wants to sit up and chat with people and sit at the bar and, oh fuck, it's 5:30 in the morning and you've got to get up at fucking, I don't pull as many all-nighters as I used to, that's for sure, but every now and again you get a kick in the ass. I got one at Inferno. The Inferno show was great, but maybe I burnt the candle a bit at both ends a few days before, and there's a couple of moments during the gig you're like, I was just gassed, And you're like, all right, come on, you fucking idiot. You've got to pay for this and sing properly. And like, unless you were the front of house, you might go, oh yeah, I can see he's been up late. You know what I mean? And compensate with a small different bit of reverb or something. But by and large, it's only really the physical, the understanding that, if you get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to get a flight, when you get to the hotel where you're going, and rather than go straight to the bar in the lobby because you see somebody you haven't seen in years, you got to go and lie down for 2 hours. Or you've got to know when to go. You know what? Usually on tour now, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., okay, I'm out. Or else you're going to be 10 days in and you're going to be like, blah, 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 and then you can't sing. And so, of course, that's just standard aging stuff. As we talked about, I'm sure that there's people into every different kind of music or discipline or whatever who go, you have to take a bit more care of yourself than when you were 25 or something. But no, not really is the answer, It's the same with sport. I'm still play lots of sports, still play football, still play all this stuff. And you just have to learn to be, you're going to be right back now, not right wing. You're going to be defensive midfielder, just kicking people when they run by, but you're not going to catch them if you chase them. So
I heard you were going to take up rugby.
Look, I used to play rugby at the beginning, but that's when I had very, very long hair, maybe when I was in secondary school. And in the beginning, I just got fucking sick and tired of people pulling your hair all the time. So I just went, you know what, I can't be bothered with this,
That's not the sport for me anymore.
Yeah.
I agree with you on your vocals, by the way, and I've thought about this an awful lot recently, just because of conversations I've been having with people. My daughter is really interested in singing, so I talk to her about it a lot, and we kind of relate to it on that level. We'll sit and watch YouTube videos for hours. And I'll show her Stevie Nicks, and I'll show her Chelsea Wolfe, and I'll show her some of the male singers I really like. I've shown you to her as well. I think there's a place that certain vocalists reach where they kind of break through the barrier of sounding like the people that influence them, and they start to express themselves with this kind of very, I don't know the right word, this very honest way of singing. Like it is authentically 100% their voice. Mark Lanigan was one person like that, without question. I think Josh Homme is that. Chelsea Wolfe is that. I think you're in that space as well. Is there firstly, is that theory full of shit? Am I reading too much into it?
No, I mean, when you're a kid and you're like, there's a rehearsal demo of Primordial from '92, which has sort of clean singing on it. And in the end of '91, I was even trying to do it, but it wasn't singing. I wanted it to sound like Christian Death or Fields of the Nephilim, or specifically Mesmerized from Into the Pandemonium, which of course was influenced by Christian Death. I didn't know I could sing yet. So even though I was obviously really into heavy metal, it didn't enter my head like, you can put some Manowar into this, or you can put some Dio into this. It wasn't until a little bit after that you kind of went, you realize, you could hold a note and hold something there. In the beginning, like The Darkest Flame, I think it is. There's a rehearsal. I think it's the most rare Primordial thing there is. There's a cassette released, it's a pressed cassette, and there's a rehearsal song on it from '92. And there's clean singing in that, along with black metal singing, recorded on one track on a microphone in a booth in the middle of the rehearsal room. But it was more trying to be, like Nephilim or something like this. And in the beginning, you're just a composite of the things that you like. And then you begin to find your voice. And of course, my voice had a sort of Irish accent to it, or there's a sort of regionality to it that affects your tone. And then you also, because your voice is, it's a muscle, like it's part of your body, so it's never the same between any few people, nobody sounds exactly the same. So the inflections and the sort of, you begin to learn what you do well or what gives you character. Some of my favorite singers are not really good singers technically, but what they have is this incredible rich character or timbre, or especially in the old heavy metal or new wave British heavy metal stuff, or the kind of, I would give me Fenris singing Vinterskugga over fucking the singer from Savatage in the 90s any day, or you know what I mean, or that's a bad example. I'm trying to think of some very plain power metal singing that I don't really like, which doesn't really have any feeling. But he's actually pretty good, Zach Stevens. So I take that back. But it's just a case of trying to find your own voice, trying to find your own little niche and elements that you sort of put into it. But yeah, there's a moment where I think for me, it was like this. It was after Gathering Wilderness where there were gigs where I wasn't singing Coffin Ships right, and I was still fucking drinking a lot, and the party and then the whole other shit was as important as the gig. And there's a moment where you have to sit down and go, okay, am I a hobbyist or am I a musician? Am I actually a singer or musician? And to take up the mantle properly and put, as much energy and thought into that as there is in all the other externalities that are, occupying your young, dumb mind, and then that becomes the focus more so, and you just, you are right. You do begin to find, oh, this is my more authentic voice, even though I don't really like that as a phrase, but it's part of it is just aging and maturing. And it is true. Singers hit this kind of sweet spot where you have a sort of form of muscular atrophy, because let's be honest, when you're 65 or 70 or whatever, you're not going to do the same thing as look at Klaus Meine or David Coverdale or something like this, You're very lucky if you get into your 60s with an intact 1970s voice. Very, very few people get there, Dio could, but Dio never did falsetto,
Mm. Well, I saw, he doesn't do falsetto either, but I saw Brian Ferry, who in Every Dream Over Heartache at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think there's a video of it on YouTube, 2018, and he sounds fucking amazing. And this is like, he would have been early 70s, I think, when that was recorded. Yeah. He sounds astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I did a side project thing called April Men with my cousin, and we did a cover of Love is the Drug by Roxy Music, and a sort of an electronic cover of it, and god damn it, that was hard to sing. There's one thing that being a heavy metal singer, you don't really quite realize when you sing over electronic or pop music or stripped down music, is that in heavy metal you have a wall of frequency dynamics which masks small inflections in your voice and can mask dips in and out, and of course you need power to sing over it. A good example is Bono. If you watch this, let's say what's the album from 81, 82, Under a Blood Red Sky and all that stuff. I can't remember, but anyway, he could sing heavy metal. Like there's footage of him recording his vocals. It's fucking powerful as fuck, But when I was doing, I don't know why. Oh yeah, the reason was because we did a cover of New Year's Day as well, a U2 cover as well. And so, but when you don't have this frequency, this wall of frequencies to mask small inflections, you realize that every single tiny flat note or tiny little thing is completely out there. And so trying to do Love is the Drug, even though, when you're used to singing with the pedal to the metal, like with force, to sing with subtlety, but also keep all the inflections and notes and key, it gave me a real, much greater understanding of Bowie and Brian Ferry and Roxy Music, and maybe some stuff singing that I hadn't really paid as close attention to. And especially making that EP, was listening to a lot of 70s stuff like that, and you kind of go, okay, I see there's a Mark Bolan thing here, or there's other kind of, different elements of the sort of inflection and the tone that were quite inspiring, because there are things that I'd kind of gone, meh, too, because, you're just listening to fucking Manowar or whatever,
Yeah.
But so, yeah, Brian Ferry, yeah, amazing voice. Roxy Music, go listen to old Roxy Music, is so good.
Well, I mean, I've brought this up as well on the podcast before, but I saw Tom Jones randomly perform a show at the fucking races in Newbury. I was just there with my wife, and holy shit, was I blown away. I think it was more, I'm not even necessarily a Tom Jones fan. I was more impressed than most of the other people that were there, because I just couldn't believe how well he was singing for his age.
Oh, if you want to go and watch one of the greatest vocal performances ever, you can find black and white footage of Tom Jones singing I'm Never Gonna Fall in Love Again. You can watch one of those YouTube reactions to people singing. I mean, beyond masterful. Absolutely incredible. And he's still at 80 years old, has a huge voice. So yeah, no, absolutely. Be a fan of Tom Jones. I highly recommend it. It's not that I go and sit, listen to loads of Tom Jones songs, but every now and again, I'll watch some YouTube stuff and I'll just be like, my God, look at this. Puts us all to shame. And then you watch, like, especially with Bones, the guitar player, Dread Sullivan, will do these fucking huge, wild YouTube journeys and sit up all night just listening to music. And it'll end somewhere with Nina Simone and Tom Jones and, you know, incredible 1960s soul singers or something. And you know, as a singer, you can't, or as a musician, you can't help just, you know, be in awe of something like, you know, watch Nina Simone or something. Yeah, you know.
If we get back to that, to your vocal performance on How It Ends, what is to you like a particular standout moment that you're really proud of as far as your performance is concerned of that song?
Well, I suppose on some level, the thing that stands out to me for How It Ends is that 3 of the songs were done in one take, with no overdubs. And that's when you're really in a moment and you're just going, I don't fuck around with the singing. So I'm like, go. Let's fucking keep pushing, keep going. I break the back of a song, 80%, get it done, several a day. When you're in the mood, you've got to feel like really physically well and up for it. And you've got to feel in a certain kind of mood. You know, if I'm feeling tired or whatever, it's like, forget it, do some bass or do something else. But there's 3 songs, Pilgrimage to the World's End, I can't remember the names of the other 2. And they weren't really that well rehearsed. But say Pilgrimage to the World's End is anchored by the vocals. That's a vocal driven song. And I'm very proud of the lyrics. And it's one take. I don't think we fixed a single thing. And after it, I was just like, I think that's it. And I don't know. There's a moment where you can be full of sort of a kind of like hubris of like, a sort of egotism where you think, oh yeah, that's it. And the next day you listen, you go, fucking hell, what was I thinking? It's full of overblown dramatization or the wrong sort of feeling, but it was correct. And the whole feeling just sat in. Death, Holy Death is another one. And the way that the lyrics fell in together, and then to do it in one take was something. I'm quite proud of that. Although what happens then is that you don't live in the song. You hope to play it live, but because we didn't headline a tour for the last album, which is where you play big long sets and you play all those new songs, slowly but surely the new songs get relegated to the B division or the shelf. And that's one of the things that festivals do, is they kill deep cuts. If you're only playing festivals, you got 50 minutes, you got to hit with your heaviest punch. And unfortunately, you fall into the routine of playing the same 5 to 10 songs. And deep cuts go missing, especially if your songs are 5 to 10 minutes long. So I was listening to, I can't remember her name. She's an English pop singer. She's quite famous, but she was quite profound in this. I might remember her name when I'm talking about her. She was saying that exactly that the sort of the songs that you pour over as the B-sides, as the sort of interesting artifacts, the curios, the strange things, just get forgotten because one song becomes a banger and people go play the banger fits in the live set and then you're off. You know? So I like playing 2 hours or 2.5 hours or long. I like a big long set and to sit into the songs from the last couple of albums that I feel that I haven't lived in or sung more than 3-4 times. And that feels wrong to me because when I listen to them, I can still enjoy them, but I'm like, fuck, I would like to have a go at singing that again or feel how it's like, you know, feel like, I don't know, I suppose like you just want to live in the song for a bit. And but that's the nature of how fast things go in the industry, but also what happens after 10 albums. There's songs I feel I haven't got used to that are 20 years old now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's songs from Redemption of the Puritan's Hand, the title track, that I think about and go, I'd like to play The Black Hundred, or I'd like to play Where Great Men Have Fallen. There's songs on that I wish we could play live and stuff, you know. So it's just one of those things, you just have to kind of accept it. So I don't really know. I couldn't pick out specific moments. I mean, there's a few very, very high pitch bits and a few complicated harmonies that I'm quite proud of. One where I burst all the blood vessels in my eye from singing, which was a bit weird. Just have a completely red-black eye, you know.
Where was that?
In the studio. It happens now.
No, but on what song was that?
Oh, there's some really high parts in one of the songs. Some like super high, like, Riot, Manowar, super high. But like the thing about falsetto is you can reach a certain note, but do you have the body behind it? So you up there, do you Painkiller it out, or do you, King Diamond it out? This is
yeah.
King
Diamond can still throw those falsettos. I saw him at Beyond the Gates last year. He was magnificent.
He is, yeah. I think he's getting a bit of help from some backing vocals at the side. I think that's
yeah.
But no, I think once he had the surgery and stopped smoking, I think his voice came back, big time. But yeah, he sounds amazing. He does,
The one of the big moments for me, and it is a shame what you say about, the way that the festival circuit works and everything, kind of relegating some of these songs to the background, because one of the big moments for me on how it ends, the part on We Shall Not Serve where you sing for every butcher will become the butchered.
Oh, yeah.
Firstly, I love those lyrics, but just your delivery, the way that you're locked in with the guitars, the rhythm, it is just mind blowing. It's always like when I think of that record, that's one of the first parts that springs to mind.
Yeah, that's a very aggressive song, very brutal song. We're still playing that live even until like a year ago or something. But it's a very brutal song, and it's a very old school black metal, kind of with the double pedal and stuff, And that's what Irish people call the Union Jack, the butcher's apron. And so, because the song is sort of a bit about, it's not about Ireland and England or anything like that, but it's about, there's a sort of spirit of resistance in the album that is about the resistance to authoritarianism, to empire, to colony, to this kind of stuff. So I wanted to write it from this sort of, almost like there's a little sprinkling of Ned Kelly in there. There's a little sprinkling of a bunch of other things, but to write it from the sort of how can we say, the perspective of the sort of rebel militia side of this, resisting, colony or empire. So for every, butcher, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, that's another lyric I'm quite proud of as well, but sometimes it falls into place. Once you get the syncopation with the drums at the end, it's quite brutal. And that's a very brutal voice. That's a thing that most, that sort of it's like deep, it's like here, throat voice. When you first start doing that, it just shreds your voice. Like you'll lose after 20 minutes of doing that. But you get used to it, and it's a kind of, I suppose, there's a little bit of Through Silver and Blood, Neurosis was where that sort of style, that kind of really deep-throated shouting style from, But even how it ends, I even managed a bit of kind of like the throat singing stuff, that sort of, I don't know where it comes from, shamanistic throat singing. So these are all things that you couldn't do years ago, But yeah, that's We Shall Not Serve is, I may have to have words to try and bring that back into the live set, And also because it's 6 minutes long, not 9. You can
squeeze it in.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes if we have a 55-minute set, we sit with 51 minutes. Sometimes we don't have 3 more minutes. Don't have a 3-minute song. I have to say we should just play Misfits songs or something. But that would be a good addition. But anyway,
I'll do medleys like Metallica used to do.
Yeah, I saw Metallica in the early '90s do that. I was fucking disgusted. Like a Kill 'Em All medley where you got bits of songs. Horrible idea. Don't do that.
I'll start rounding the bend now to wrap up, but you've kind of skirted this issue before in conversations I've heard. Do you think there will be? Is there a chance that there won't be another Primordial album? Let me ask it that way.
No, I think there will be. I think I just liked the idea of calling it How It Ends because it was a sort of bit cryptic, and people kept on asking me then. People who cared. I think there will be. Yeah, we talk about making some new stuff. We just haven't quite. It's like strange. It's like time moves very slow in Primordial Land, but gets quicker outside of the ecosystem that we live in. But we're talking about something like an EP or something new. What we should have done actually with How It Ends is keep 2 songs back and release them a couple of months afterwards as an EP. It's a bit long, maybe the album. No, there will be something eventually. Quite what it is, I don't know. We'll see. Next year we're going to be playing some different album live sets. To the Name Is Dead is 20. I think Other Witness is 25. So we're going to do some gigs, which I mean, I used to be against the idea years ago, but now I like the idea because it means you can do those deep cuts. And also because it's still the same four of us at the core of the band, you know?
Mm.
So if it was just me and four other people who didn't play Into the Nameless Dead, playing to Nameless Dead, that might suck. But it's still, you know, me and Paul and Kieran and Simon. So, you know, I mean, why not? While we have our, you know, our time on this spinning around.
Mortal Coil.
This Mortal Coil, yeah.
How important has that consistency in the lineup been, you think, to Primordial's longevity?
Yeah, no, it absolutely has been integral. Because we've grown up together. It's the same core three, me, Paul and Kieran, since 91. They're playing together since the end of 87, when they were like 12 and 14 or something. So they've nearly 40 years playing together. And so we have fights like that would break other bands up, but we also just have a sort of very Irish attitude to it of like, well, look, that's just how it is sometimes. And you've grown up together, and we've been involved in each other's lives through births and deaths and marriages and everything else, and part of each other's lives. But we were never like a hangout band.
Mm.
We weren't like you know, drinking buddies together, even though we are friends who drink together now and again, you know. So we didn't wear ourselves out with each other. We also have quite a high tolerance for each other. And you would have to have for some of that, you know, the daft stuff that goes on being in a band. But yeah, it's important because you keep, you know, the essence, the sound is really Kieran's, you know. He's the one who shapes the vision of the band more than anybody else. But everyone else can come in and say, well, how about this in a different key? What about this riff? What about this drum set? You know, there's no strict rules. And so we don't trade files. We don't trade riffs with each other. We have to be in the room, just like we want. We still meet, sit around, talk nonsense, go, have you got any riff? Blah, 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 write it on the wall. So it's the exact same process. We try and make it as human as possible and as lacking in any kind of modernity other than that it's a phone recording the rehearsals as opposed to a cassette recorder. That's the only difference there is. We won't rehearse online. We don't rehearse with, you know, it's still amps in a room, making noise. You know, it's just the same process with the same people. And we haven't chopped in, changed out. Any of the people who've been playing with us or helping us, you know, whether it's Jerry from Death the Leveler, or now we have Shoney from Unyielding Love playing with us. I mean, they've helped with recording or being around us, or, you know, Shoney steps in to help every now and again. But it's still always the core of the band, you know. So it's I think it's kind of essential. And also because I think there is an element of Irishness to it, in that there's been everything from, like I said, births, deaths, marriages, fistfights, you know, doing awful drunken stupidity and nonsense and saying terrible shit and whatever else, but it's all taken in the grand sort of scheme of life. No one, there's no part of Primordial that is holding some grudge from something somebody did 10 years ago.
Mm.
Or there's no like, I was going to say there's no WhatsApp group with everybody else without me in it. There probably no. It's just we just have a very Irish approach to it, you know, and that's a very matter of fact, straight up, sort of blunt approach to this is just your life's work, and sure there's ups and downs, and take it seriously when it needs to be taken seriously, and don't take it seriously when it doesn't, and that becomes it becomes a fine art of understanding in that moment what is to be taken seriously and what isn't, you know. To know when, sure, he's just been the bollocks, go off and be drunk and say whatever shit you want, and the next morning shake hands and go, forgotten. You know, that's kind of the ability to, that's a very, if there was one piece of advice I could give to younger bands, and that is figure out what you should take seriously and what you shouldn't, you know. And that sounds really, really dumb, but figure out when to be absent in the studio, when to be there, or when to focus or not focus, or to make yourself absent. But also to just figure out, well, this is the drink and the drugs token, or this is the whatever token, or this is something other than whatever is, you know, whatever seems the most instant obvious thing. There's something else going on in the background. That's probably what's speaking here right now. And so part of that level of humanity of being in a band when you share time together in a room, not just on the screen, is that you understand that there's other things happening, moving in the background. And so that's, I think, the key to whatever it is that works in Primordial. Somebody just threw something over my railings. I didn't ask for that piece of daft holistic advice, but it comes from being in a room together, not on a screen together, to understand everything from, like, you come down on the tour bus in the morning and you see just somebody's body language, the shoulders, you go, okay, what the fuck is up? Something's going on, you know? And there's some elements of that are part of the Irish condition. I don't know what human condition, whatever you want to say. Anyway, blah, 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 blah.
Well, Alan, it is always such a blast catching up with you. I think on that reflective note, I had one super controversial question for you.
Okay.
When are we getting a sequel to Alchemical Warfare? I've told you how much I love that album.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm mixing it tomorrow. Tomorrow morning.
Oh, hell yeah.
Tomorrow morning is the final mix. It's about 80% done. So tomorrow morning. So it should actually be theoretically finished on Sunday. So
fantastic.
There you go. Yeah. So actually tomorrow is the answer.
I left that pregnant pause in there on purpose because I wanted to psych you out for a split second there.
No, we have to. The cover is done. The artwork is done. The songs are all. They're just in the final phases of the mixing. So tomorrow morning at about 10 in the morning, we'll go to the studio and finish that, and hopefully by 10 p.m. it's a done deal. So tomorrow is the answer.
Awesome. All right. Well, great talking to you as always. And I do hope at some point, because we've talked back and forth now for a couple of years. Yeah. I do hope at some point we're not behind a screen when we speak again.
Indeed, we can send our avatars out to do battle for us.
100%. All right. Take care of yourself.
Take it easy.
Wrapping up a fantastic third, but hopefully not last appearance on Into the Necrosphere, you just heard Alan Averill croon his way through a song entitled We Shall Not Serve. That is taken from the most recent Primordial album, How It Ends, released by Metal Blade back in 2024. And interestingly, earned top spot honors on my top 30 of 2024. So if you haven't listened to that record yet, make sure that you get on it right quick. I want to say massive thank you to Alan for his time. And this one was a somewhat less divisive conversation, I would say, than some of the ones that we've had previously, but I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it very much, and I do hope that at some point we'll get to do one face-to-face, but either way, it is always such a pleasure having him on the show, and he knows he has an open invite to come back on anytime he wants. I'll post the Bandcamp link for Primordial in the description to the podcast. Of course, make sure you check out Alan's podcast if you don't already follow it. That is Agitators Anonymous, and then Dread Sovereign. Nice bit of news dropped there for us at the end. If you haven't listened to the 2021 Dread Sovereign album, Alchemical Warfare, fucking change your life. What an album, and what great news. I cannot wait for the release of that new record later this year. So again, I'll post the Dread Sovereign Bandcamp in the description to the podcast, just in case you need to familiarize yourself with that band and what they do. Right now, it is time for some unsanctioned filth, and this week's band basking in the spotlight hail from Atlanta, Georgia. They're called Epikoros. Interestingly, they were recommended to me by no less than 8 members of the Legion. The band themselves then got in touch, and I was like, I absolutely have to share this with the rest of you guys. Quite how this is unsigned is beyond me, but their debut album, Black Sun Eclipse, is out now, and taken from that record, this is a song called Phalanx of Infidel. That was Phalanx of Infidel by Epikoros, taken from their debut album Black Sun Eclipse, your unsanctioned Filth band of the week, and what a debut this is. Of the people that told me to check this out, I think probably 100% of them said this was going to be one of their favorite albums of the year. I have absolutely no idea how there was not a single record label willing to sign these guys to a contract or willing to do what it takes to sign them to a contract. But either way, a bit of trivia for you. They boast amongst their ranks the legendary Nils Dominator Fellstrom on the drums. For those that don't know, in which case, again, you probably stumbled onto this podcast by mistake, but he drummed for Aeon, Dark Funeral, Nordjevel, Sanctification, Soul Drainer, The Wretched End. He's been a live drummer for 1349. They actually do a cover on this record of Sculptor of Flesh by 1349, and apparently it features absolutely no drum quantization or any of the usual studio tomfoolery or trickery that makes things sound absolutely perfect. But of course, given that it's Dominator playing the drums, it still ends up sounding perfect. Either way, fantastic stuff. Make sure you check it out. I'll post their Bandcamp link in the description to the podcast. If you head over there and you help yourself to any of their music, do let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere who sent you. And if you find yourself in a similar situation, you're in an unsigned band and no one wants to pay any attention to you, but you believe in what you've done, then drop me a line on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. You can also contact me through the website, intothenecrosphere.com. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or X. Send me your Bandcamp link. If I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. And you will go on to fortune, fame, and glory, the likes of which you have never seen. A quick reminder, much to the chagrin of the simps and other trailer trash that frequent the Metal Warfare Forum, I am a card-carrying member of an elite quorum of content creators known as the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. We kick off your week on a Monday with Horrorwolf 666. That's brought to you by the great Brandon Legion. Yours truly, Old Jackson, brings you Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday, and right now in the tank, I have got a fantastic conversation with Jason Pepiat from Psychroptic and Permafog. I recorded last night the first ever long-form interview with the three men that make up the band Winterland. I was supposed to talk to them originally at Fortress Festival, but they had various technical issues, reasons why they were late coming to the venue. We cover all of this on the interview, but for whatever reason, we didn't make it happen face-to-face. I did record it last night, though, and it came out great, so I'm very excited about sharing that with all of you. And then I've got a few other bits still left over from Fortress. I've got a few things that I am currently busy booking. So 2026 is turning out to be a banner year for the show, and I want to say thank you once again to every member of the Legion, new and old. If you like what I do and you've supported the podcast and you've talked about it and helped spread the word on the socials, I really appreciate it. You are as much to thank for the success of 2026 as the man presenting it. And I am very, very humbled by the amount of love and support that I get for the show week in and week out. On a Wednesday, we have got your first double shot. It is Everything Went Black, hosted by Mike Hill from the band Tombs. We also have Iblis Manifestations. That's hosted by Cheyenne from the band Trivax. He's now switched to a twice-a-week format. So he does an interview episode on a Wednesday, and then he does a solo episode on a Sunday. We also have on a Thursday another double shot, Necromaniacs, one of my favorite shows of the week. Mike Hill returns for that. He is joined by his co-hosts, the Sheriff Mike Scondado, the Professor Jeff Kashid. They review new and old horror movies, a podcast not to be missed. And then we have your first of two installments of Soul Knox. That comes your way on a Thursday and again on a Sunday. That's hosted by the sinister minister himself, the Reverend Carl Hykara, a man who is no stranger to Into the Necrosphere because he's been my co-host on the Weekly News Rant plenty of times. And speaking of which, that is about to come your way. But before we do that, a quick public service announcement. If you were deeply offended by my calling the women who play in the band Dogma a group of rent-a-slatins, then I'm afraid the next hour or so is going to hurt your feelings tremendously, which is your cue to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, Legion, we kick off as always on metalstorm.net, the finest metal news website in all the land. And if this is your first time checking out the weekly news rant, we're going to listen to some music. I'm going to give you my first impressions of what I hear. We're going to talk some shit. I'm going to answer some questions. And then later on, we're going to do some dunking on the Swirly of the week. But first, we're going to check out the new single by Hulder. It says here, the new Hulder single, In Blood and Earth, is now available. It's taken from their upcoming record, Verbolgen, which will be released, or I should say co-released, by 20 Buck Spin and Season of Mist. It has premiered online in the form of an official music video. Let's check it out. We went into overtime on that one a little bit because that intro was fairly lengthy, so I wanted to give it a chance to get going so we could come to a proper verdict on what the song sounds like. But I will admit, I really like it. Much like the previous single that Hulder put out, I think that the atmosphere in the song, the build-up is really cool. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, I don't know what song, but it just the overall feel of Jinn by Cobalt, which, by the way, if you don't already know this, you should know that Cobalt is one of the greatest black metal bands that the United States of America ever spawned. All of their albums are masterpieces, but particularly the last two, Jinn and Slow Forever. Make sure that you listen to them. If you haven't heard them yet, Go on Spotify, check them out. I don't know whether you can still get the vinyl, but you might be able to go on Discogs or eBay or something if you want to buy the physical copy. But it is fucking fantastic. Back to Hulder, though. Like I said, atmosphere works really, really well. When the song kicks in, you know exactly who you're listening to. Those vocals are very distinct. I love them. The riffing is focused. It's nasty. It's got a real kind of edginess to it. Not too showy. And then the rest of the instrumentation, particularly when that kind of additional melody comes in about a minute into the song kicking in properly, I think the instrumentation really embellishes on, and it really augments the core melody of the main riff. And again, like I said, Hulder herself, she sounds absolutely outstanding. We're starting off the week well. I'm giving that one a thumbs up. The album, by the way, in case you are keeping track or counting down, that gets released on August the 7th. And like I said, it's getting put out by $20 Spin and by Season of Mist. I think they've got some sort of regional deal going. Anyway, I said we're going to answer some questions as well, and we'll start with one that was submitted for last week's news rant by Grind Your Mind 77. He asks a question for the rant based on the conversation you had last week about future headliners. Who do you think are the genuine up-and-comers from the extreme side of the fence? Who will replace the true OG Euros like Mayhem, Emperor, Satyricon, etc. as festival big-name headliners, the sort of name that can make people buy a ticket before the rest of the lineup is announced? Very, very tough question, because when you talk about Mayhem, Emperor, and Satyricon, you're not just talking about bands who have a legacy and who have name recognition. You're talking about bands that spawned an entirely new movement, an entirely new subgenre. And arguably, when they play on a festival today, I'd say at least 80%, if not 100% of the bands that are on that bill at some point were influenced by one of those three bands. So replacing them when that's kind of their value proposition on a festival, I think is nigh on impossible, unless somebody somewhere is going to be able to come up with a subgenre or the blueprint to a subgenre that is going to be as impactful as Norwegian black metal. I just don't think there's anybody that can pick up the mantle from them. I really don't. Now, does that mean that, the scene comes to an end the day that Emperor decide they're going to stop touring, the day that Attila decides he's going to start drawing that pension check? No. I do feel like there are some bands that could certainly step up to the plate and be future headliners. Some of them I like, some of them I am not necessarily personally as big a fan of, but I'm going to give you my reasons as to why I think they could be headliners. Some of them you probably may not agree with, but I'm keen to hear everybody's thoughts. So top of the list, I would say Black Braid. Now, I know that I thought I'd throw a controversial one out of there from the start, but hear me out. I have seen Black Braid perform live. I mean, the fact that he has been able to develop the following that he has developed with zero label support. All he's had basically is Katie helping him with press, and he's had the strength of his albums. That says an awful lot. And you can just tell when you see him live that there is something special about that cat. Now, you guys know my thoughts on John. I think he's a great guy. I've had him on the podcast twice. If you haven't watched those episodes yet, make sure you go and check it out. If you hated the dude before just because you thought, you bought into the bullshit that he was an industry plant and this, that, and the other, I don't know what to say to you. I've spoken to him twice. We spoke for over an hour. We spoke probably offline for another hour after each one of our interviews. I think he's a great dude. But all that aside, he is a tremendous performer and an incredibly charismatic performer as well. So I think Black Braid have the potential. A band I am less enthusiastic about, but unfortunately I must confess that I feel they do have the potential or they may be destined for bigger things, Gairia. Now, I don't have to repeat myself here and go through their discography. I kind of fell off after Mirage. So Unsettling Whispers, Limbo, and Mirage, great albums. After that, not so great. I thought when Coma came out that people had kind of gotten a little indifferent towards them. I was wrong, however, because they just seem to be going from strength to strength as far as the size of crowds that they draw. And so, as much as I don't necessarily like the direction that they've taken, I don't like the fact that they've tried to move away from black metal. They've deliberately tried to kind of shake the black metal mantle. I do think that, if you were a promoter and you had a choice between them and, a bunch of the bands that we like, and it was all about money and about turning a profit, Guerrilla is probably the band you're going with. Other bands on that list, 1914, I think have a lot of potential. Kanonenfieber, who we spoke about when I had Alan on earlier. There's also something pretty special about them. When I saw them play with Panzerfaust, you really could tell there was something in the air that felt a little bit different when they came on stage. Now, if there were any justice in the world, there would also be a room on that list for Panzerfaust, but unfortunately, we have certain elements in our scene that will preclude that from ever happening. Even though Slaughter to Prevail did really, really well. Not that, Panzerfaust is, of the same riff-raff cloth as, cut from the same riff-raff cloth as Slaughter to Prevail. But, there's just certain people that are going to bulk against them no matter what. They're going to say, Brock said mean things. Brock said things that made me sad, so therefore I don't like Panzerfaust. But Kanonenfieber, getting back to them, they could be a contender. 1914 as well. And Mysterium. I think if Mysterium stay on track and they have hopefully some good guidance, which I think that they do, and they continue to make smart decisions themselves as a band, then there's no question in my mind that they could be a really big thing as far as the future of the scene is concerned. The very fact that, like I've said before, my wife, who does not listen to this music at all, has seen them live twice now, and both times she's been impressed. That says an awful lot. If somebody who barely knew the sound of a distorted guitar before she knew me can watch a band like that and go, that is our fucking show, should get played, I mean, then they got something going for them. Another band I will add to that list, and perhaps you may point the finger and say he's being a little biased here, but I do feel like Trivax could be on that list as well. I felt, before I'd even become friends with Cheyenne, I felt that they had a really extraordinary and unique story to tell, and that if the right person could kind of, I guess, disseminate and package it as something that they could, promote the band with, then they could be absolutely massive. And I still believe it. So, again, Cheyenne is quite a, he's very much a free spirit. He's his own man. He says his own thing. That might rub certain people the wrong way, but I mean, let's be honest. If we go down that list of the bands we just mentioned earlier, there's no arguing that Attila and Satyr and Ishan, they kind of do their own thing too. So yeah, those would be my bands, but you guys let me know in the comments who you think could be future headliners. One thing I do know is that when these legacy bands go, there is definitely going to be a gap, and it's going to be very interesting to see who steps up to the mark in the future. Okay, moving on to some more music. From the Vastland have got a new album title, cover artwork, and song available for us to listen to. Norwegian black metal act From the Vastland has shared a new new music video for Decadence from their upcoming album Servant of Ahriman. That is going to be released by the Crawling Chaos Records label on September the 11th, 2026. Let's hear what this sounds like. fucking sensational. I've had this band on my radar for a while. I did like their previous records, but yeah, I can't recall when a From the Vastland song has grabbed me quite as much as the 2.5 minutes I just listened to there. That really is fucking badass. I mean, it sounds aggressive, it sounds angry. There's like a little whiff of the Norwegian masters in there, but obviously Sinner from, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sinner from who's from the Vastland. He's actually from Iran originally, and as it happens, Cheyenne knows him, so I might see if I can get him on the podcast at some point. But you know, I think he brings in some of his own flair into clearly brings in some of his own flair into the music. But yeah, I think that sounds fucking absolutely badass. Great production, just overall great vibe. Exactly the way that black metal should sound, in my opinion. So that's actually getting a top notch. Let's just go right ahead and dole out one of the greatest honors in all of the underworld. That gets a top notch without a shadow of a doubt. The album, by the way, I don't know whether they announced we have already announced the release date, September the 11th, 2026. Man, there are a lot of fucking good records coming out before this year is up. I don't know how the hell I'm going to narrow it down to 30 albums. I actually wanted to play you guys something else that because they feature a member who used to be in a verboten band. I've not necessarily seen the song promoted on any of any of the usual suspects, any of the usual websites, including Metal Storm. But over here, we don't give a fuck about that kind of nonsense. And in case you're wondering who I'm talking about, Terrestrial Hospice, they have just put out a new single called Phosphoric Salvation. It is taken from their upcoming album Omnicide Chapter 1, and that, ironically, is also being released on September the 11th. Now, just in case you were wondering why they are on probably the shit list of, the types of people that post on Is It Sketch and the RABM, subreddit, it is because they feature somebody who used to be in the explicitly verboten band Thunderbolt, Skygan, their vocalist, guitarist, and bassist. He was in the band, I think, until they broke up, and he was called Payman in that band. But yeah, he was in Thunderbolt until they broke up in 2007. So I mean, we are talking nearly fucking 20 years ago. But of course, for a lot of folks, I think if you don't empty both barrels of a shotgun in your mouth in a show of contrition, nothing else will really suffice as a means for you to say that stupid shit is now behind me. Anyway, like I said, I don't really give a fuck about any of that, nor should anybody who listens to the Weekly News Rant or to Into the Necrosphere. So let's listen to what Phosphoric Salvation sounds like. That is unquestionably a second successive top notch on this episode. And I would go as far as to say I can basically already guarantee that it's going to be in my top 30 of 2026. That is fucking brilliant. Pure Polish hell. What else do you call it? Like black metal is one of those genres, right, where you can play 10 bands in succession, and many of the bands will follow the exact same formula, but there is just something about the bands that execute it to an absolute turn. Whether it's the emotion, whether it's the passion that they're able to exude through the music, they just get it right. They execute almost the exact same blueprint, but there's just something that they do a little bit differently, and this is a great example of that. I could think of 50 bands that on paper you could describe in almost exactly the same way as Terrestrial Hospice, and yet Terrestrial Hospice takes a steamy piss on all of those bands because the way that they implement that blueprint is just so much better than so many of their peers. Like I said, that is fucking absolutely fantastic. From vocals to guitars to drums. The drums, by the way, most of you already know this, but just in case you didn't and you heard the drumming and you thought that sounded tasty, that is because it is delivered courtesy of Inferno of Behemoth fame. And you can say what you want about Behemoth, but Inferno's drumming is something else. Now, there's another band actually that has been getting not a lot of love from, there we go, Mordant Rhed. It's not been getting a lot of love from any of the music websites, but I really like it. And Vincent from Acheron dropped me a note the other day and said I need to check it out. I noticed that they put out a brand new single a day ago, so we're going to listen to it here. Mordant Rhed is the name of the band. They have put out a new single called Knife Wound. It's going to be released as a split LP with Lord Humongous, who I have featured on the podcast before. Well, let me give you a little 2-minute taster, and you guys tell me what you think.
You are all my children.
That is absolutely up my street. I love the aggression. I just love the whole vibe of it. Reminds me a little bit of Daiva, which is a very good thing. I actually noticed, by the way, that Daiva are busy working on their new album, so very excited to hear that when it comes out. This is just it just bears all the hallmarks of perfect black and thrash, and like last week when I was talking about potentially one day at some point in the future doing like a day festival or a mini festival of my own, Mordant Rhed, they'd be a perfect inclusion for the kind of music that I would want to promote. So that is getting another top notch as well. 3 top notches in a row, and it's been a while since we've had one of those, and I mean them very, very sincerely. By the way, that split EP is going to be called Bonded by the Bomb, for your hard-earned money. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's already out. According to Metal Archives, it's already been released, put out by Gems label on the 15th of May, and for your hard-earned cash, you get 4 Lord Humongous songs, and you get 7 Mordant Rhed songs. So 33 minutes of music in total. Absolutely no reason for you not to buy that. That is fucking excellent. Top-notch, as I said. Right, I think we've got another question, and this one I know is... actually, just hang on for 10 seconds. I need to read you guys the rest of Grind Your Mind 77's comments. Also, love what I have been listening to. Love the what I have been listening to part of the show. Hot takes for you. Bleeding Me is up there with the Metallica greats. Rust in Peace is pure wank. No Lane, No Chain. Sebastian Bach would take Anthrax to another level. Yes, I said all that. Mic drop. So I agree with you on Bleeding Me. That is a great song. It might be taken from the less inspired era of Metallica's discography, but it is excellent. Rust in Peace being pure wank. Come on, dude. That is by fucking a country mile the best thing that Megadeth ever did. That to me, that's beyond debate. No Lane, No Chain, that I can kind of get, but I actually don't mind the William Duvall. I think it's William Duvall. Alice in Chains albums. But, I mean, there's no question that Lane Staley, he was the superior Alice in Chains vocalist. And then Sebastian Bach, I mean, he's just the sort of guy that needs to be depantsed and thrown off a fucking bridge. I can't stand the bloke. He would not take Anthrax to another level. There's only one man who would take Anthrax to another level, and his name is John Bush. No debate about that. We will listen to that new Anthrax single in a little bit. As a matter of fact, funny you should mention it, because it is literally right in my eye line. Anthrax release another single. Anthrax have released The Edge of Perfection, the latest single from their upcoming 12th studio album, Cursum Perficio. The album is scheduled for release on September the 18th via Nuclear Blast Records and Megaforce Records in North America. Let's hear what it sounds like. Look, these guys are all in their early to mid 60s. So the fact that they are willing to put their cocks on a block and try something a little bit different, kudos to them. I saw some people talk about this or refer to this as black metal. It's not quite black metal, but it does sound a little bit like post black metal, like Gayria we were talking about earlier, like Gayria style riffing, kind of. A proto blast beat. I'm probably technically speaking that is a blast beat, but it doesn't sound like a standard black metal blast beat, like we heard blast beats deployed on the New Testament album, for example. But that being said, I commend them for trying something different. I actually don't mind the melody in the way that they, that in that kind of post black metal piece that they put in there. When the song itself gets going, it's actually not too horrible either. My first impressions, because I had heard this before I recorded the news rant. My first impressions were a lot less favorable. I still don't necessarily like it, but it is so much better than that first single. The lyrics are better. I would say Joey Belladonna's singing is better. Not that his singing was terrible on It's for the Kids. Again, I had to tip my hat to the fact that I think he's 65 years old, and he sounds pretty goddamn good for a dude who's getting discount on his bus pass. But it's not. It's ironic. It's called The Edge of Perfection because it's nowhere near perfection, but it's not as terrible as It's for the Kids. I'm just still, somebody for whom Anthrax is just not a band that holds very much appeal at this stage of the game in 2026. Right. So I had one other question. I mentioned earlier there was a question that was no doubt going to be hotly debated, but this comes to us courtesy of Obsidian Shrine for Into the Necrosphere. Rank your favorite Motörhead albums and what's your number one favorite song? First one that comes to mind. So favorite Motörhead albums. I'm going to be honest with you. My tastes when it comes to Motörhead is actually quite pedestrian. So if I start with my favorite songs, because that all ties into my favorite albums, my favorite songs are Overkill, Orgasmatron, Killed by Death, Dirty Love, The Chase is Better Than the Catch, and We Are the Road Crew. Based on the number of songs taken off of one particular album, you can probably guess my favorite Motörhead album is Ace of Spades. I think, to me, that is just them at the absolute peak of their powers. But really, I'd say, you could probably interchange the first four albums by that band, and depending on my mood on the day, I would say that's my favorite album. But I do find that in terms of consistency, I think Ace of Spades it's the most consistently excellent record by Motörhead from start to finish. And my favorite Motörhead song, unquestionably, is We Are the Road Crew. My favorite Motörhead cover, just as a sidebar and a bonus, is the Midnight cover of Dirty Love, which is a fucking masterpiece. I have featured it on the podcast before. If you haven't heard it yet, go on YouTube. It's there for all to see. Speaking of something that is there for all to see, Devil Master have put out a brand new single. It says here, Philadelphia, blackened crust punk outfit Devil Master have released a brand new single entitled You Worms' Vain Delusions, alongside the announcement of their fourth studio album, Bloody Dreams. That is due out on September the 4th via Relapse Records. Let's hear what this sounds like. pretty decent. I really, really liked Ecstasies of Neverending Night, the previous Devil Master album, which came out back in 2022. So I did have high hopes for this one. It's not grabbing me quite as much as that record did. And that album, basically from fucking minute one, was, you know, it certainly captured my attention. But yeah, not so much. Maybe it's the fact that we really have become pretty spoiled when it comes to, you know, throwback blackened thrash bands with kind of a horror theme. You know, we listened to that band Rapid a couple of weeks ago. That is just absolutely sensational. Not entirely the same kind of music, but I think if you have a hankering for that kind of thing, you know, you had a choice between Rapid and Devil Master, at least for me, I'd be digging that Rapid album 10 times out of 10. That being said, I will hold out judgment because I do want to hear the rest of the record, just based on the fact that I really, really loved the previous one. Yeah, that's where I stand right now. I'm gonna remain neutral and indifferent towards this track. It's not blown me away, but it has certainly not earned a brown down. Some news here. Abigail Williams already working on a new album. There was a Abigail Williams album out last year, of course. By the way, that Abigail Williams interview, I actually still need to check and see whether that file is something I can salvage. I told you last week that you know, out of everything that I recorded at Fortress, it was a fucking excellent interview. But when I try to watch the when I try to watch the interviews back, for whatever reason, the second file seems to be corrupted. So not sure if there's anything that I'm going to be able to do about it other than try and get hold of Ken and do another one. Other news here, and this is very shitty news. Panzerfaust have had to cancel all their European summer shows after their drummer Alexander Kartashov suffered an injury due to a bike accident. And basically, they've had to cancel all the shows because if you've seen Alex play, you understand that it's not just something that any old jackass with a pair of drumsticks and a fucking you know, a couple of cymbals is going to be able to recreate. So hopefully he gets better very soon. I met him when they played in London in 2024. What a fucking nice guy. So, you know, of everybody that doesn't deserve that, he certainly didn't deserve it. So, you know, Godspeed. Hope he recovers very soon. More music. We got Left to Die premiering a new track off their forthcoming album. Legion of Doom is the advanced single from Left to Die's forthcoming Death Covers album, Initium Mortis, and it has surfaced online. The band has also confirmed an extensive touring plan across the Latin American region. was utterly outstanding. Now, last time that I played a Left to Die, a Left to Die song, you guys did me the solid of correcting me on the fact that I had not mentioned whatsoever that it was or there was effectively a death covers band. So let me dive into some of the trivia surrounding the song that we just listened to, Legion of Doom. The song apparently predates death itself. It was one of the very first songs that Chuck Schuldiner wrote. Dates all the way back to the Mantis era. I think the song dates back to 1983, and like I can hear a very, very distinct Hellhammer influence in the riffing there. Sounds, I mean, just fucking brilliant, frankly. It was originally intended for Scream Bloody Gore. Apparently was included in the first cut that was, or cut of the album that was submitted to Combat Records. But when they rejected those sessions, the album was re-recorded and this song did not make the cut. You can actually hear it on the 2016 Relapse reissue of Scream Bloody Gore. And you can also, of course, hear it, And it sounds absolutely fucking brilliant. I love that. You know, I said this before. There was something about this, the simple approach to riffing in the 80s that is just absolute magic. It just feels like those guys could do more with 3 or 4 notes than, you know, a lot of modern bands could do with 40. Quite why that is, you know, I have no idea, but you know, I'm taken back, for example, to seeing King Diamond last year at Beyond the Gates, and when they played Halloween, again, the most simple riff, but holy fucking shit, does it sound badass. To this day, I mean, like, I think that song is probably 30, maybe 32 years old. I can't remember the exact year that it was released. But yeah, to this day, just sounds absolutely masterful. And so does this. I mean, you know, if this was written in 1983, that means this is 33 years old. It's older than a lot of people actually listening to the podcast right now. And it still sounds like it could kick the absolute dog shit out of just about anything, certainly being released in the mainstream today. So top notch from me, beyond top notch, as a matter of fact. Another bit of news, there's a new Prong album coming out in November. That band I really love, and I really wish they would come out with something that is on a par with Cleansing, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Cleansing, and what was the album that they put out just after that? Really, as a matter of fact, all 4 of the first Prong albums I thought were fucking brilliant. Beg to Differ, Prove You Wrong, Cleansing, and Rude Awakening, genius. And then after that, I don't know what the hell happened. There's been albums that have had like 1, maybe 2 good songs on it, but there's just never again been anything where from start to finish, like you had with Cleansing, it was just a record that you couldn't get enough of listening to. So yeah, that's a shame. There was another bit of news I wanted to share with you guys as well. As a matter of fact, there's quite a few news headlines, like actual news headlines. It's been a while since we dove into any of those. But let me shoot over here to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, Blabbermouth, and we'll climb into one of them because one in particular caught my attention, and it is basically Old Man Jack, formerly of Deicide and Cannibal Corpse, who seems to be on a non-stop complaining spree about his previous employers. And for whatever reason, I feel like every time he opens his mouth and he talks about his time in Deicide or he talks about his time in Cannibal Corpse, to me at least, he starts to sound more and more like the asshole in the relationship. Where the fuck is this? God damn it. Let me see if their search function is worth a goddamn, and then we'll find it. But yeah. For fuck's sake. There we go. Finally got it. Jack Owen says he had a rough time trying to write music for Deicide. I always viewed them as a kind of Slayer influenced band. So anyway, it says here, in a new interview with Finland's Chaos Zine, former Deicide and current 6 Feet Under guitarist Jack Owen spoke about the differences between writing music for each of the two bands. He said, yeah, it kind of went from 0% to 100% now that I'm in 6 Feet Under. I was blocked by myself in Deicide. And by the time I kind of came up with a formula for writing nonstop, I was kind of done with the band. So there was that. And I always viewed them as a kind of a Slayer-influenced band. So I was trying to write that, and sometimes things that I would write for Deicide really didn't sound like where the band was going. I really didn't like the first couple of albums. Sorry, it didn't really sound like the first couple of albums. I was just about to say, if we didn't like the first couple of albums, that's worthy of the Swirly right there. It was something totally different. He added, yeah, it was a rough time for me writing when I was in Deicide and the lack of touring, and I just had to walk away at some point. But he says all of that, and then he brings up this business again of having submitted, I think, 3 or 4 songs to the band. He got into the band room, and Steve and Glenn had changed a bunch of stuff in the songs around. He then, had a bit of a hissy fit and said, that's not how the songs sound. Glenn said, that's how they sound now. And of course, Steve, having worked on the songs, was going to take some of the songwriting credit, which I don't think is unreasonable. And apparently for that, Jack, took his ball and went home and basically ghosted them. And that's how he was kicked out of Deicide. So, I feel like maybe somebody needs to tell Jack that he shouldn't be doing any more long form interviews, because every single time he talks to anybody about either how he left Cannibal Corpse or how he left Deicide, there just seems to be, I don't know, he just seems to be the sort of guy that if you were reading his interview as, if you were checking his references, if you were considering having Jack Owen in your band, reading his interview as a reference, I don't think that he would make the cut, not in my band. So I thought that was interesting and worth sharing with you guys. Another song before it's almost time for us to head to the toilet bowl of reckoning, but we'll listen to this first. Dandelion have put out shall be releasing a new album this year. Spanish black metal mob Dandelion will release their new album Dandelion later this year. The band has promised to take its sound in a new direction with a self-titled album, their 10th overall, and the successor to 2023's Fatum. To promote the release, the band has shared the first single from it, Temple of Internal Ruin, on the Black Metal Promotion channel. Check it out below. Let's hear what it sounds like. You know how I was saying that there are some bands that can execute the black metal blueprint to a turn, like Terrestrial Hospice, and some who can't? I won't say Dandelion completely failed, but it just sounds, I don't know, it just sounds tepid. It sounds uninspired to me. Maybe I've been spoiled by their countrymen in Versio Humanitatis, and so I just naturally expect more from Spanish bands. But yeah, that song just doesn't cut it for me. There's nothing about the track that I hear and instantly go, fuck that, there's something special about Dandelion. There's something that, really makes me want to come back and listen to this again and again. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe some people will like it. I don't. I'm giving that one a thumbs down, I believe. All right, friends. We're going to do something a little different on the Weekly News Rant. Not Weekly News Rant, sorry, on the Swirly of the Week. Because a lot of you guys asked me about it, and I feel the need to comment on it. So with that preamble, sit back and buckle up, because this is the Swirly of the Week. If you're like me and you're a long-time fan of MMA, boxing, rugby, I would bet that in most cases you could probably name the exact fight, the exact evening, the exact match when one of your favorite fighters or one of your favorite players knew that their career was drawing to a close. Like when you knew the curtain had dropped and the aura of invincibility, that kind of fearsome reputation that fighter used to have, was gone, and things were never going to be the same for that man. I remember really well when Chuck Liddell, the Iceman, one of my favorite fighters of all time, got his head sent to the fucking nosebleed section by Rashad Evans at UFC 88. One of the most beautiful knockouts, one of the cleanest and most technical knockouts that you will ever see. Chuck fought 3 more times after that, but the night that happened, I knew that he had reached his end. Another one of my favorite fighters was Mirko Cro Cop, and I was actually in the crowd in the Manchester Evening News Arena when Gabriel Gonzaga nearly decapitated him with a head kick at UFC 70. So much so that my friend who was with me, we kind of looked at each other and we thought, there's a very good chance that Cro Cop is dead. I mean, it was that loud that we thought there's a very good chance that it is all over. Now, in fairness, Mirko actually did come back and he fought a few more times. I think he won 10 more times after that. But the Mirko Cro Cop from Pride, the right leg hospital, left leg cemetery, absolute fucking demon that he was, the unstoppable man that he was prior to that night, was gone, consigned to the history books. Now, when these things happen, I've often thought about what it must feel like for the fighters themselves in the aftermath of those battles. Like, how do you, as a man, reconcile yourself with the fact that you are demonstrably no longer as fear-inducing as you once were? You're no longer the alpha male. You're no longer the baddest man on the face of the earth. Your aura of invincibility, like I said, is gone. When you've built your entire life around earning that and around working exceptionally hard to maintain that, I bet that it must be extremely difficult to make peace with the fact that in an instant has been taken away from you. And I feel that if you're a true fan of combat sports and a true student of what these men were able to accomplish, then the feeling for you is bittersweet too. Like whenever I see it, and it's true of Cro Cop, it's true of the Iceman, it was true of Dan Henderson, it's true of, it's even true of Brock Lesnar. When you see it happening, I kind of get a sense of my own mortality, of my own fallibility, and you get reminded of the fact that time is going to come for you too. But one thing that you never do is you never stop respecting what these warriors were able to accomplish. You never stop admiring the determination that it took to get to that level in that sport, to get into the cage, get into the ring, run out on the field of play, and in front of thousands and thousands of people in the crowd and thousands more watching at home, put aside your fear, your sense of well-being, and test your mettle and do what only the smallest fraction of the human race will ever have the talent or the guts to do themselves. Now, I imagine as a man, one of the hardest things to deal with in the aftermath of all of this is the plethora of pathetic, sniveling losers who slither their way onto social media to denigrate, degrade, and mock your accomplishments. This weekend was a great example. Conor McGregor was never a favorite fighter of mine, and I do believe there's a very valid case to be made that he came back entirely because he needed money. But this was still a man who knocked out Jose Aldo in a matter of seconds. He knocked out Eddie Alvarez. He made that look like a breeze. Jose Aldo and Eddie Alvarez were two of the most dangerous human beings on the face of the earth. And bear in mind, these are guys who even today could walk into the average bar and probably clear out the place if they were fucking smacked out, coked out, boozed out. I mean, they could have one arm tied behind their back and they would have no problem beating up at least 20 civilians. Conor McGregor knocked those guys out and he made it look absolutely effortless. So there is nothing that I find more pathetic and a greater display of being an absolute douchebag, dork, and a loser than some of the comments online that followed Conor McGregor's defeat at the hands of Max Holloway at UFC 329 this past weekend. Washed up, has been, stoned out of his head, couldn't even walk in before he went to fight. I last longer in bed than Conor McGregor lasted in his fight tonight. You look at the sorry sight of the fucking wastrels who made these posts, and at least I think to myself, how do you look yourself in the mirror when you when you look like these men and behave like these men? How do you look yourself in the mirror and feel anything other than shame and embarrassment? Not to mention that you would not in a million years stand in front of Conor or in any of the other or in front of any of the other fighters that I mentioned and actually say these things to their face. I couldn't personally imagine saying something so extraordinarily stupid without, at the very least, contemplating eating the bullet out of sheer embarrassment and sheer shame. If you're listening to this and you have never taken that walk to the cage, or you've never taken the walk to the ring, or you've never ran out onto the rugby field, and you still have the fucking temerity to call somebody whose career has come to an end a washed up loser, whatever else you want to call them, then frankly, as a man, I have absolutely no respect for you. I don't have any respect for you as a human being, which is to say, shut your trap. Step up to the toilet bowl, nerd, and receive your dunking. And that, my friends, was the Swirly of the Week. That brings us to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Episode 324 is done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed it. Massive thank you to Alan Averill for his time. Massive thank you to all of you for checking out the podcast until the very end. We're going to wrap up with a classic by the band Razor. This is Take This Torch. Take care of yourselves, brothers and sisters, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.